Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the early birds to our third webinar. Obviously, we're hoping the technology works for us this evening and that the line stays stable. Tonight's theme is preparing and planning for spring 2021. And it's great to see so many people already arriving and joining the chat and letting us know who you are. Those of you that have been involved in our webinars will have heard me say this a few times now, but you should be able to hear me. Obviously, if you can't hear me, you can't hear me. But if you can't hear me, I'm assuming you're reading this slide, you're checking your connection, and you're going to be using the chat function to let us know. Generally speaking, the technology has worked. The lines have been stable, but we typically will get one or two people who are having issues. So let us know in the chat. We've got some people in the chat function helping us tonight who might be able to give you some advice if the line is unstable or you are having any issues. You may be able to hear me, not see me, that type of thing. One thing we always say is that Chrome is the best browser for this particular platform. If you again are having any issues, if it's not stable, it might be worth logging out, logging back in, and trying Chrome to improve the experience for you. And as we always say, obviously we want tonight to be as good as it can be. So hopefully at your end you can minimize distraction. Always make the point you will remain on mute throughout, so there's no issues there. But hopefully, just for yourselves, you can minimize distraction and listen to us as we're talking all things natural turf. So some very familiar names in the chat, which is great, and some new names, which is great, and quite a number of people there already here. But we're still a couple of minutes to go to the live start time. So we'll just roll around these slides again. Anyone just joining can hopefully read that if they can't hear me. Hopefully you will have found the chat function typically on the left-hand side of the screen, but it is movable. So if it isn't on the left, just have a look around, move around, scroll around, and you will see the chat function. And say hello, let us know who you are, what club you're from, and if you are having any technical issues, flag that in there. And some of the people we've got in the chat tonight will be able to help. Again, if you're just joining us, technical issues, we obviously want to keep to a minimum. And one way you can help us to do that is by using the Chrome browser. So you shouldn't have any issues. If you've got a wobble on the line, log out, log back in, exactly how you did, but use the Chrome browser if you've got that functionality. And before we move into the main slides, just my final reminder as we approach 7 o'clock that it's great if you can minimize distraction, but not to be too concerned because you are automatically on mute, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. Keep talking about technical problems. Those of you who were involved last time, we did have a slight technical meltdown. Certainly, I disappeared off the screen, which might not be any particularly bad thing, but it was not until 5 minutes before the end. So we managed to get through that. Hopefully, tonight will remain stable and things will work. And in a worst case scenario, we might be handing the baton over if different people disappear. So bear with us if that happens. But the key thing is, if you have any technical problems your side, we do record the webinars and they're now available on demand. So if you're having problems, if it becomes frustrating, feel free, step away and pick it up on demand through the RFU website. We got lots of questions from you before the webinar, which is great. We really welcome them, and we've tried to build them into the slides that we're going to be talking about. So look out for that. If we don't answer your question, as we always say, it can be challenging with the volume of questions we sometimes get, but we will take them away and come back to you either on email. And I think we did some phone rounds last time just to get back to you on that. The resource library is another really important part of the webinar. And again, have a look around your screen on the platform, on the hub, where you should be able to find the resource center. If you can't find the resource center, then again, let us know in the chat, and we can help you to do that. And there's some great stuff in the resource center tonight, an example pitch policy, some top tips from Jim Buttar, amongst other things. So take the time to find the resource center, and we'll be referring to it through the slides. As I said, we're recording the webinar, so it is available on demand if you want to have another look, or if you have any technical problems. We will finish at 8 o'clock. We have been pretty good on that. We have slightly run out of time, I think, on at least one of the webinars, but we certainly haven't run over too badly, and I feel confident tonight that we will all be done by 8 to get on with our evenings. So we're delighted you've taken the time to dial in. We really hope you find it useful. And as I always say, please use the chat function to communicate with us and say hello. We'll be coming to you with different questions, different polls as we go through the evening. So hopefully it'll be quite interactive, and we can crack on. So first thing we just want to do is get a flavour of who's out there. So I'm just going to hand over to Alex Bowden, who is just going to do an initial poll to find out who we have got out there.
Thanks, Ted, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar in the Rugby Groundsman Connected series. Yeah, just following on from the first one, where we had a sort of really widespread of people. Just want to get an idea for who's on tonight. So in a second, I'm going to launch a poll. Just a reminder, if you've put the slides onto full screen, you need to just reduce it back down because the poll will appear on your screen. But if you've got it as a full screen, it doesn't pop up. So just give you a second to do that if you have, and then you're welcome to go back into the full screen. I'll remind you each time. So I'm going to launch the poll now, and that should appear on your screen. And we're just simply asking, what role do you have? So we'll give that a few seconds for people to be able to add their response. Hopefully it's appeared on everybody's screen now. We've got club grounds team member, committee member, paid grounds person, contractor, supplier, or other. So we'll see what's with us tonight. So a couple of seconds, and I'll close that poll, and then you'll be able to see the results appear on your screen. So I'll do that now. So looking at that, got a good spread of sort of 30, nearly 40% of club grounds team members, 40% of committee members, 12%, 13% paid groundsmen. Then we've got some contractors and others on. So a good spread again, which is great to see. So that should appear on your screen to have a look at yourselves. And then I will hand back to Ted, who will carry on with the next section.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. And it's really useful for us just to know who the audience is. We can use all that kind of insight in terms of shaping things for the future. So that's great you took the time to just run through that. Some introductions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ted Mitchell, and I work for the RFU as National Facility Development Manager, and obviously have been involved for a number of years now in the Groundsman Connected program that we run. And with us tonight, we're absolutely delighted. We'll hear more from them later on, but they'll perhaps give us a wave now. Is Andy Spetch. Andy has a number of hats. Many of you will know Andy. Tonight, I guess, has probably got his RFU Pitch Advisor hat on, but he might be switching amongst hats depending on where the slides and the questions take us. So we'd like to have Andy on board and in support of us tonight. And also John Sayer from Crowborough Rugby Club, from the legendary Crows Friday Club, who's here again to give us a bit of his thoughts of what's going on down at Crowborough at the minute. So we're absolutely delighted to have some different people involved to keep things fresh and hopefully dynamic. But we do also have some familiar faces in support off screen. So in the chat, we have got RFU head groundsman Jim Buttar, and he will be in there to no doubt say hello, and if there are any questions in the chat, to provide his insight and guidance. We're very grateful to Jim for joining in that regard. Alex, who we just heard from, and John, who are RFU facility development managers, for different areas within the country. And again, there in the chat, you've heard from Alex. He's going to be running the polls, and I can see John is active in the chat. So they're there to help, as is Alex Thompson from a technical perspective. And really important are our other pitch advisors. And I know certainly Colin Worcester, who's said hello in the chat from Charlton Park, our first ever pitch advisor, very active. And he's in the chat also to pick up any technical questions. So we're delighted to have Colin with us tonight. So very quick update. Obviously, it's been a kind of challenging time for everybody. Obviously, some of you may be aware in terms of the RFU, it's been a difficult period of time, and Groundsman Connected, as a result of that, perhaps has been a little quiet, and we apologise for that, but we hope you understand the circumstances that the organisation was kind of going through. But we're coming out the other side of that now, which is great. Lots of challenges still ahead, but just to stress, Groundsman Connected wise, we want to do even more through into next year. So again, as always, we want you to have your say in the terms of the direction of that and the shape of that. So really, it's quite a short update, partly to say yes, we maybe been a little bit quiet, but we're back on it, and we're here tonight to kind of kick things off again. And really, the other point is just to stress what we want these webinars to do is all linked together. So they're not a series, they're not a sequential series, but we certainly think that they lock in and they complement each other. And obviously, we just want to refer back to webinar 1, where we talked about the importance of the plan, whatever that ended up looking like for your club and you as a groundsman. That was of crucial importance, and we think that's going to be relevant tonight. So hopefully you're going to be asking yourself questions about your plan, what it looks like, and reflecting on whether or not you've been able to share that with other people in the club, some of the other decision makers within the club. And one of the things we're going to look at when we talk about the pitch policy is a lot of stuff around prioritisation, and particularly in the context of COVID. So again, we're going to be looking around those types of questions. In terms of tonight's objectives, really what we're hoping is that you're in a position when we leave tonight to really be clear and able to consider how a pitch usage policy can help your club. Again, maybe that some of you have got it, and this is a chance to reflect and tweak if necessary. For some of you, it might be a new concept that you can develop. So hopefully that will be useful. Hopefully, again, you'll leave today and you're going to be able to really kind of refine and focus in on the impact of COVID. It's obviously impacting on all of us, and it's continuing to do so. And we want to make sure, that we touch on that, and that we give you guys some support around your programs. And bringing it together is that idea of just considering amendments, to your annual pitch maintenance program. So using what you learned to go back to that plan and move it forward. And the way we'll do that, the agenda, I'll do a brief introduction, and then I will go quiet around pitch advisors, just to make sure everyone's clear on what they are and what they can provide to you guys. And then I'm going to be handing over to Andy, supported by John, and Andy's going to be looking at that pitch usage policy stuff. Some great stuff there, feeding that into a budget and considering budget implications. And throughout that, we'll kind of try to weave in some COVID considerations and bring that to life a little bit. So that's the plan. The last bit from me really is just around volunteer pitch advisors, VPAs, as we kind of refer to them. And really again, some of you will be well aware of them, but what the pitch advisors offer really is free bespoke advice to rugby clubs. And really the genesis of pitch advisors was going back a few years when Keith Kent was head groundsman and very active out in the game. It was clear that the demand from the game for that type of face-to-face support was undeliverable by one person. So we came up with the concept of volunteer pitch advisors, people that were out there in the game, of expertise and experience, that would like to almost become part of the team, or not almost, actually become part of the team and provide advice to clubs. So it's an invitation only situation. So we are we are handpicking the people that we feel are right for the role. Andy, who you're going to hear from, is one of those people. And we currently got 12 across the country. So clearly you can see from that we haven't got complete coverage, but certainly there's some real hotspots where we are able to offer that face-to-face support. It's completely free, as I say, and you just requested via Groundsman Connected. So if you would like a visit from a pitch advisor, drop us an email to groundsmanconnected@rfu.com. And simply just say, we'd really like someone to come and look at our pitch. If you're in one of the locations where we've got pitch advisors, that's great. If you aren't, we'll look to see if there's anything else that we can do in order to make that happen. And basically, they'll visit the site, have a chat with you. It can be in relation to a particular issue. It can just be for some general advice. And they will have a look around your pitches, have a chat, and then provide a report. So a bespoke report for your pitch, in plain English, with some kind of key things key feedback and suggestions as to how to move that forward. So just before I hand over, I'll just bring John in at that stage, because John, I think certainly Crowborough, you have benefited from visits from our pitch advisors. Do you want to just
yes, we have, yeah. Yes, we have. We've been very lucky. We've actually had 2 official ones, and they were the catalyst, if you like, I suppose, to kickstarting our pitch improvement journey. It was Colin Worcester came early in 2017, and then by coincidence, later the same year, we were awarded a NatWest funded grant and a visit from Keith Kent. Both visits, they were highly charged with information, what to do, facts and tips. And what it did, it confirmed that we were our journey was starting on the right road. But I think the best thing that came out of them was the written reports, because in my position, I was talking to the club board saying we should do this and that. But when it came on an official piece of RFU note paper as an actual report from both Keith and Colin, it set the scene, if you like.
Brilliant.
And that really helped, really helped.
Great. And did you find it pretty straightforward in terms of, being able to set that up, make contact with us and things fell into place?
Yeah, just it's falls into place and we've carried on.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, John. We'll hear a lot more from you, but that's great. And that just brings the pitch advisor opportunity to life. So to lead us now into listening to Andy and hearing from Andy about the pitch usage policy, we're just going to lead into that with a poll. So Alex Bowden, if you'd like to just talk us through that, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Ted. So on to our second poll, just to get a bit of a feel for and support Andy with sort of the introduction and the session he's going to do. We're just going to launch another poll on your screen now. Again, just a reminder, if you are looking at it in full screen, you may need to just reduce that to see the poll. So you should see a poll appear on your screen now. And we're just asking now, do you have a pitch usage policy at your club? So just a simple yes or no, just to get a feel for who uses one already, who's got one out there and in place. So won't give that quite as long because there's not as many options there on the answers. So just give you a couple more seconds. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity just to click the yes or no, and I will close the poll now. Brilliant. So 31% have a poll, and nearly 70% don't have a poll. Sorry, get that right. Have a policy, and nearly 70% don't have a pitch usage policy. So hopefully the session that Andy's going to lead into will allow people to have a think about whether a pitch usage policy is going to be something which would benefit their club. So I'll hand back to Ted to do the introductions, Andy, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Great. So thanks, Alex. So I'm going to hand over to Andy Spetch. Andy is someone many of you will know, involved in the turf care industry for a number of years, kind of esteemed groundsman at a rugby club, and has kind of almost moved to a more executive level in terms of that, involved in pitch advising for the RFU, and very active in the game in kind of the eastern part of the country. does various bits and pieces with the IOG, and his day job also is in the industry. So we're delighted to have Andy with us today to talk us through his slides. So Andy, without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thanks Ted, and evening everybody. It's good to have a target, so I see 70% don't have a pitch policy, so hopefully tonight will be of use to you. This is probably going back about 8-10 years ago now, when I was an active volunteer groundsman at our local club, and I'd got to a position where I felt I was becoming that miserable old bloke that just sort of walks around telling everybody to get off the pitch and stop enjoying themselves, and that wasn't where I wanted to get to. I always wanted to make sure there was rugby for all, and that as a club we were pulling together as one team, and having surfaces that everybody else that came to the club wanted to aspire to. So I thought, well, how can I get more people on board? So I felt, for me, I wanted to get something that would be self-policing, so I wasn't having to go down there on training nights and grab hold of a 9-foot-high second rower and ask him to move off. I wanted people to, buy into it and agree the policy. We'll have a set of expectations, but also something that would help reduce cost and time, reduce cost in terms of the pitch maintenance budget by reducing wear, and then the time that us volunteers had to spend on putting things right. And the net effect would be an improvement in playing surfaces. So the people that I needed to get to were all stakeholders. This is everybody at the club. As John said earlier on, the committee, they're the guys I had to go to ask for budget, ask for money, so they were very important. But the managers of the different age groups, the captains of the different age groups, the coaches of all of the different parts of the club, be it the ladies' sides, be it the touch game, be it the schools that came in during the weekdays to play at our place, county sides, as well as our senior sides as well. And it's good to have something written down, but as well, it needed communicating face to face because people can interpret things on paper in different ways. So it took time as well to sit down with the key stakeholders and influencers to get their feedback and to build this policy. So we got something that wasn't just my work and me just saying this is what we've got to do. It was what everybody agreed to. John, have you anything similar to this at Crowborough?
Yes, we have. It hasn't been called a policy, and it's not anything as deep as what you've done, Andy. We've called it pitch protocols, and it's things like stopping spectators going on on pitches, pitch warm-ups. If you like, warming up on the pitches, and we've produced an A4 sheet, and we've put them in frames in every changing room. Expand that out to training, especially on Sundays when people just tend to go to one spot. They are encouraged to move on, but we haven't really expanded that any further.
Yeah.
So yeah, work in progress, if you like.
Great.
Things, a lot more to do.
Yeah, thanks, John. And yeah, having them in changing rooms, absolutely perfect. So the value that you get out of this pitch policy is hopefully there'll be more games played. We're not going to get the damage on the pitch that might lead to games having to be cancelled. So net effect would be more games played. Better player retention and more revenue into the club. Well, I've always been a great believer that if you have a great surface that looks good, when people turn up, there's a nice striped pitch and it looks the business, that'll help attract sponsors, helps attract spectators who will hopefully go up in the bar, have a few beers and put money over the bar. And I think as well, it gives a real boost to the players of whatever age. If you make it special to play on those pitches, especially maybe to play on the main pitch, it's a special occasion at whatever age group you are, then again, it's helping get that buy-in, that one club ethos that's out there. And like everything comes back to money, again, it will save you money in terms of your pitch budgets, which we'll cover in a bit more detail in a moment. I got a question here, which was, I think, one of the most common ones. It's about how do you reduce damage from line-outs and scrums that have been done under the same floodlights at training. And I remember Keith Kent, one of the first times I met him, he talked about this medical condition that is called first floodlight syndrome. And I've witnessed it. It's quite serious, actually. I know the NHS are very busy at the moment, but this is something as well that does seem to happen. And so it's how do you reduce it? Well, one of the approaches I had, but please, share ideas you've got. But one of the approaches I had was to talk to the coaches and say, look, guys, we've got big dead ball areas here. If I mark out some line out areas for you, if we put the scrummage sledge in those areas, could you do your repetitive drills for line outs and scrums in those areas? I can make them as big as you want, small as you want. I can have several of them. And that seemed to help reduce it. I was giving them what they needed, and then they were helping me keep the pitches in better order. Okay. So building the pitch policy, the areas that really need to be covered, certainly training. I think training for me often causes more damage than the game itself. I've just talked about the scrummage and line out areas. So any repetitive work, skills work, try and keep that off the playing area as much as possible. Run-throughs, well, to me, a run-through, you has to be some give and take here. I never had an issue with people having run-throughs, but it's more trying to get agreement that the repetitive work is done off pitches. And then when it comes to matches, I think John made a very good point that it's one of the great things about our game is we've got lots of friends, and the opposition, they should always be meted and greeted, and give them a copy of your policy. Maybe just a one-pager saying welcome to the club. Pleased to see you. You're in training room number one. You're in changing room number one. Your warm-up area is such and such an area. This is what you'd like you to do. So again, you're setting expectations. You're giving them something. You're making them feel welcome, and hopefully get buy-in from them. And then, you need to think about having contingencies for bad weather. So who'll do an inspection? When will the inspection be done? Who'll be doing the calling off when it has to be done? Right. So if I hand back to Alex now, I think there's another poll.
There is indeed, Andy. Thank you very much. So just to get a feel for how people are managing their own site and where some of the challenges are coming, the next poll is going to ask, and it's going to come up on the screen now. It's going to ask where you find your biggest pitch management challenge. So is it in the training? Is it to manage training sessions and the damage that's maybe caused from that, or the problems that comes from that, or is it match days? So we'll leave that poll up for a little short while. Again, if you were watching it on the expanded view for the screen, just reduce that so that the poll appears. It should have popped up on your screen now. So we'll give that a couple of seconds. Let that run through and let people have an opportunity to input. And we'll now close the poll. So a big percentage here. I think probably, I know I haven't chatted to Andy before, probably as expected, but 90% of people say the biggest challenge is from training sessions, with the remaining 10% from match days. So that will appear on your screen now. And I'll hand back to Andy to continue the pitch policy.
Great, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so one of the big area of contention at time is the pitch allocation. John, do you have a pitch allocation board or system at Crowborough?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I suppose you could say we've got a pre. I can tell you what we do what we were doing pre-COVID. The allocations were printed each week for a Saturday and Sunday, and they were put in A4 frames in the changing room corridor. And in addition, on a Sunday, we put up an A-frame on chalkboards outside. It's our ambition, I think. Well, I know it is. It's my ambition to get a big sponsor board and put it up on a wall outside the clubhouse. But to avoid, so obviously post-COVID and now, to avoid any contacts within a small corridor, we're using our club website, which has a pitch allocation page on it, and we're directing players, parents to that, but obviously not relying on that only, because there's regular engagement and communication with coaches, players and parents through multiple communication channels.
Great.
And also we've got the pitch protocols, which we've been talking about earlier.
Yeah, lovely, John. That's great. I mean, again, another idea is, in addition to the website and having things up in changing rooms, I got a big piece of white plastic you could write on, and we pinned it to the fence as they ran out the changing rooms. It was smack in front of them in big printing, and it had all the age groups on, and it said, "Tonight, guys, you're on pitch X, you're on pitch Z." Just so, because you'll always get somebody who will say, "Oh, I didn't realise that, I didn't see that." So it's just always just trying to keep subtly reminding people. Great, thank you. And yeah, it is all about one team and working together. I think if you can achieve that, then you will get buy-in, and you won't just be that lone voice wandering about moaning at everybody. We're all volunteers. We want to enjoy it. We want to provide for rugby and watch the game ourselves and have a beer in peace afterwards. Great. So it's over to Ted, I believe.
Thanks, Andy. Great stuff there. Real practical bits of information that I'm sure people are finding really useful and great, in terms of your own club experience, and John adding to that, really bringing it to life and putting it in that rugby club context. What we're interested to find out about now, we've got some great stuff from the first question, is for you to give us some thoughts in the chat around how you're managing your pitches with the return to rugby. So obviously what we're talking about here is obviously rugby post-lockdown and the kind of COVID situation. And we're going to just come on to talk about that between ourselves. But what we would like you to do is anything that you have been having to do, any challenges you've had, any opportunities you've had around players coming back to play after such a long time, then please put it in the chat, and we can almost build up some kind of good practice guide of what's been happening. So we'll continue to move. We're doing okay for time. We're keeping a nice pace. So we'll leave that in the chat. Please look at what each other are saying at the same time as hopefully staying engaged with the slides. So just in terms, many of you will have seen this, some of you may not. This is an England Rugby RFU document for the return to rugby. It's our return to rugby roadmap. And this is this move from stage A, which was the first return to rugby in the most restrictive of conditions earlier on in the pandemic. And obviously what we're aiming to do and what we will do is ultimately get to stage F, which is effectively a return to full contact competitive league rugby. And where we are at the minute is at stage D, which allows for some limited contact, and obviously you will have seen in the press in terms of the work we've been doing with government to get rugby and some of the other outdoor sports given exceptional circumstances for some of the other guidance around the rule of six and things like that. So for the on-field activity, actually being able to take part in bigger groups. So this is obviously the main document that we refer to for the playing of the game, and clubs and players and coaches and officials are obviously very interested in it. But obviously what we know and we've discussed in previous webinars is that COVID and the gradual return to play, and sometimes the short notice of it, and what happens from it, has a real impact on grounds teams and groundsmen. So we just want to touch on that and have a quick chat about it, and hopefully pick up on some of your questions, some of your responses to the question in the chat. So obviously the theme for the first half has been around pitch policy. So that return to Rugby Roadmap, as I said, it has undoubtedly, look, we all know that it presented huge challenges in the first instance in terms of even the ability to get on the pitch and do anything with it when we were back in March and April. But we're also interested around some opportunities that it might present, and we'll touch on what we mean by that, and I'll maybe speak to Andy and John and get their thoughts. But it's this idea that actually less activity potentially taking place on a pitch might create an opportunity to manage your pitches in a different way, to rest pitches, to give them the opportunity that they wouldn't normally be getting at this time of year. And obviously then see if that can have a positive impact on your pitches. And clearly, again, linking it back to the first webinar, that annual plan clearly has no doubt been a very flexible plan this year as the situation has changed and players have come back, and those situations have presented challenges and opportunities for everybody. So I'll just open it up, maybe go to Andy first. In terms of your club environment, Andy, and in particular relation to pitch usage, pitch policy, any ways in which you have the challenges that you face with COVID on that, but also any opportunities you've seen to actually help the pitches?
Yeah, I think in terms of challenges, it's the same old challenges. As soon as people could get back to training and it sort of slowly expanded, then the pressures have come back on. And I suppose an opportunity that came out of that was just to go back and remind everybody that we have only got a finite amount of resource, of area, of playing area. But as well, I think the opportunity was to let some of the sides get onto pitches where they normally wouldn't be able to get on because we'd had lots of games. So it's been nice to give that offer to them, and they've really appreciated that. So in the long term, I see that as making some friends and got a few favours, I suppose, for as and when we get back into things full time. Great.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And John, down at Crowborough, listening to Andy there again, there were some opportunities, obviously challenges. How have things been down there for you and the Friday Club during these times?
Yeah, just thinking off the cuff, there was an opportunity and we took it. We started the first part of the annual renovations, I think it was about 7 or 8 weeks earlier than we normally would have done. So we had a verti-drain and an overseed. So that in turn gave the seed probably 2 months more chance to establish itself in the ground. The challenges were obviously keeping the grass mown and everything else, but we managed to do that because we've got I almost 20 acres and 3 people can hide themselves down there. So we were able to keep everything up together.
Great. That's great. And to add to that, to that great stuff from Andy and John. There's some real interesting stuff in the chat as well, and some good ideas that clubs have had around that. So we just wanted to touch on that. Obviously, the focus is on pitch policy. We don't want it to derail too much and become all about COVID, but it's that recognition that by managing the pitches, hopefully it can make some of the challenges a bit easier and actually create some opportunities. So we're going to move now, if you like, into the second part of tonight's webinar, which is focusing on building on the pitch policy and talking about building a budget. So for this part, I'm going to hand back over to Andy, who will pick things up.
Thanks, Ted. So yeah, building a budget. Budget was always a word I hated, but I soon realised that without a budget, it wasn't fair to me to be going to the committee just ad hoc saying, can I have this, can I have that? And I guess from my business background as well, I have to have budgets for that. So why not have a budget for the pitches? The club, we were very lucky. We got a very forward-thinking chairman came in a few years ago, and he was all about getting budgets in place so we could see all our income and all our expenditure, and gave us a better run club. I'm going to talk just strictly about the grounds budget. So, things to consider is what do I want to achieve? And again, I share this with the committee, share this with members. What do we want to achieve with the pitches? There could be specific issues you've got there. There could be very bare. So one of the objectives is you want better grass coverage. Very muddy, you might want to improve drainage, etc. So have a think about what the purpose is and what you want to achieve with that budget as you start to build it. Things again to consider, just like the pitch policy, it's who are the main stakeholders here. Clearly the committee play a massive part in this, as do the managers, coaches and captains again. But it's all about getting that influence and gaining support. And yes, having a visit from a volunteer pitch advisor or Keith Kent of this world, I did exactly the same as John, and having that piece of paper with England Rugby on did help strengthen my argument and get support. So get talking to them early. Because you don't want surprises. There maybe isn't money in the pot. Certainly what we're all going through at the moment, there's very little money in the pot. So you need to get in there early. And what I agreed with the committee and the chairman synchronised all budgets, that all the different parts of the club would submit their budgets around sort of March time for the next season, and then we debate them at a club exec meeting, and in that way to say there was no surprises, and I was getting a share of the pot as well as the playing chairman for players, etc., and first aid and bar. So think about what you have got already. You may have some machinery on site. Is it suitable? Is it not? Does it need overhauling? What contacts have you got in the club? Have you got people that have got equipment, or just the local golf course? They have lots of equipment. Befriend the local greenkeeper. You might be able to borrow stuff off that guy. Suppliers might be members of the club as well, so really use that. And we put a question on our membership form saying, can you tell us a bit about what you do? The reason we did that was we could then ring them up and say, I see you sell machinery, can you help us buy a tractor, maybe something like that. But John, I know you've used your contacts very well. How have you done that at Crowborough?
Well, yeah, I describe it as, so when we started our pitch improvement journey, probably 5 years ago, all we had were 3 bits of kit. a huge 2.5 ton Ford tractor, a pasture topper, and a huge roller. Knew it wasn't right, but what we were able to do was we swapped the tractor for a ride-on John Deere mower. We part exchanged the topper and the roller for a second-hand slitter, and we fundraised and we got grants, and we got a new Iseki, which was part of the RGC equipment package. And from club funds, we bought a new mower, and that was all in about 2 years. So it really is achievable. If little old Crowborough can do it, I'm sure the majority of clubs in the UK can do it.
Yeah.
And we've added strimmers, brush cutters, mowers, sickle mower, a new slitter, and our newest bit of kit's a 4-action single pass groomer. It's not the brand leader, but it does the job and it's just as good. And that's the kit we've got, and that's the kit we work with now. As regards labour, we have a part-time groundsman. Remember, we've got 20 acres, or nearly 20 acres, who works 10 to 15 hours a week. That's mainly mowing and grooming, and he's supplemented by the Friday Club. There's now between 15 and 20 of us there every Friday, but it's not just a Friday. It's almost become Monday through to Friday.
Sure. But you've really achieved that one team approach, I think, at Crowborough, and credit to you. Something I was able to show on machinery when I first took over the role at the club was we were using contractors for everything. Like John, we got a little ride on John Deere, but that used to take me days to cut all of the pitches. We then leased it was a lease to buy deal with a local supplier, 50 horsepower tractor, 3 metre mower, and I was able to show a saving against contractor rates on that by using our own labour, our volunteers, to drive that machine. And then once you've got that power unit, we picked up off eBay an old Sysis slitter. A mate did a bit of welding on it, still working now. I begged a set of chain arrows for grooming the pitch off a local farmer. So yeah, once you've got that power unit, you can start adding things to it. Great. I think we've got another poll, Alex.
Yep, thanks, Andy. So final poll of the evening, just to get a bit of a feel for how people are starting to plan ahead in terms of building their budgets, and obviously some of the impacts that people may be feeling from COVID. So I'll launch the next poll now. That should appear on your screen. Again, if you're in full screen, just reduce that so that it allows it to pop up. We're just asking of the clubs out there and the people out there whether you know what your end of season renovation for 2021, what the budget may well be. And it's a yes, no, or a still to be confirmed. So I'll leave that poll up there for a little bit longer. So again, do you know what your end of season renovation budget will be? So if anybody out there knows what it is now, that sounds good. We leave it open for a couple more seconds. And we'll close that now. Get the feedback. So 20% yes, 37% no, and 40% still to be confirmed. So quite a split on no and still to be confirmed. So obviously discussions taking place, which is really positive and feeds into what Andy's talking through now. So I'll hand back to Andy for the next element on building a budget. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah. So just moving on now to what items we should be putting into a budget. As I said, it's about producing a cash flow to help the committee, help the treasurer to see where the spend will be and at what time of year that spend will be as well. So this is an example of just the way I used to lay out a budget. I actually pinched this idea from, I did a level 3 course with the Grounds Management Association a few years ago, and they have a section on that course about how to build a budget. So I very much use their template to do that. But yeah, down the left-hand side there, as we're looking at it, I've got the items. So you're going to be mowing. The machinery you're using to mow will need servicing. It will need fueling as well. I've got diesel down here for that. Soil testing, that was something I used to do annually. Fertilising both in the autumn and in the spring as well as a minimum. And then we're looking at aeration. So there I'm talking about deep tine aeration. So your vertidrain type operation. I've put the dates of approximately, obviously weather may play its part in that, but again, it's just giving the committee a feel for when the spend will come in. White lining. We installed our own irrigation system at the club using volunteers to dig holes. A volunteer came with a trencher, took it round the pitch for us, but that irrigation system needed commissioning each year and would need repairing as well. If we're going to put a top dressing on, the overseeding, so there you're looking at overseeding rates, and they varied a little pitch by pitch. I used to get the seed reps to come in and walk the pitches, give me their opinion, but then I would also talk to other groundsmen in the industry, especially on the professional side of the game, and maybe if I was at the Saltex show, I'd go along and talk to lots of people just to check, seed rates, because seed is quite expensive. And I think as you start to improve the pitches, that is an area where you can start to reduce your overseeding rate and maybe save a little bit of money. And then there's herbicide as well. May need a couple of sprays depending what issues you have got out there. So it's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's other things that should be on there. But that was what I started with and started to build on. These are some examples of rates that you may expect to pay out there to have some of the work done. These were kindly provided by Parker's Pitches, who I've worked with for a number of years in the eastern counties, and they're one of our RFU pitch contractors. So vertidraining, we're looking around £300 to do a pitch, or a different type of aeration. Deep aeration is something called vertiquaking. Sometimes it's good to mix and match, do a slightly different type of deep aeration. You've then got the surface slitting. You've then got your fertiliser applications and herbicide application, and then overseeding. Now, the overseeding rate there would be excluding seed, so you'd have a cost of seed on top of that. But with seed, I find, shop about, talk to people. On the Rugby Groundsman Connected site, I know Rugby Taylor have a very good offer on there, but try and get to some of these exhibitions when they're back up and running, like Saltex, and you can pick up a lot of good information and save a lot of money. Ted, I think I'm back to you. Can't hear you, Ted. We seem to have lost Ted.
Might have lost Ted there, Andy. I'll jump in and help with that. So we just as we're working through this, we're trying to add the COVID element to the end of it, just to try and understand and see what sort of support and things you might require, or how you're approaching the challenges that are coming with that. So linking back to webinar 1, which Jim worked through in terms of having that annual plan. Just a question in the chat, if you can just share any thoughts, and there's quite a lot already actually coming in here on the chat already around whether or not you're changing anything in what was your annual plan for this season before COVID hit us. So whether you're looking at some of the challenges that are approaching from either having more activity on floodlit pitches, or whether you've actually got the opportunity because pitches are being used less. So if you could just share any thoughts that you've been going through in terms of what you'd originally planned to do as part of your annual programme, but what you may now be thinking we either need to do more of or need to do less. There's a great example in there of some additional worn areas from clubs that have said that they've hired out the facility to try and get some income in. So that's created some different challenges on the pitch, different areas of wear and tear. And if you have a look at Jim's top tips in the resource library, one of the examples Jim gives in terms of that opportunity is spending less in certain areas in terms of a whole pitch renovation if we've got limited budget, and really focusing on those hard to hit areas, those areas that are struggling a little bit more. So I'll just see if we've got Ted back. I think we might have just got him back. Are you with us again, Ted? Here we go. Still no sound, no problem. I will continue on the slides. If you just give me 2 seconds. Hopefully that we can start to have a look at that. So yeah, just following on from that. Oh, sorry, there's one more slide for you, Andy, in terms of the budget element.
Okay. Yeah. So final bits really on building the budget, and areas where you can help to save yourselves an awful lot of money is, as I said earlier, look at what you've got within the club, both in terms of people, skills, and resources. And a couple of examples there is I had a good friend in the club. He was a welder and engineer, so whenever I needed something repairing or even something knocking up, he was the man at his door I would go. Well, I'd usually grab him at the bar on a Saturday after a beer or two, and on Sunday he'd come down with his welder and do the work for me. So, save quite a bit of money there. A scaffolder we had in the club. I remember listening to Keith Kent talking about germination sheets. Now, to buy them, they cost a bit of money. But Keith said, well, the sort of mesh they put around scaffold, that makes a good germination sheet. So I begged a couple of rolls of that off him and used that as germination sheet. Cost the club nothing apart from a pint of beer. And then farmers. We live in quite a rural area. We've got lots of farmer members. Now, it can be good and bad. I am a farmer by trade myself and love them to death, but just a bit of a warning here that if they say, oh, we've got some fertiliser, remember that's agricultural fertiliser. If you put that onto your playing fields, the grass will think you're trying to turn it into silage, and it will just grow like mad, and you'll be cutting it forever. So don't think some free fertiliser is going to be the biz, especially if it's an agricultural fertiliser. But John, you mentioned a little earlier. Do you want to expand just about the other people you've spoken to around the industry?
Yeah. We found it not easy, but we've cultivated relationships with some key local people, and it's a good story because, when you just say we're all volunteers. The club is run by volunteers, and the volunteers do all the work. There's probably one of our best friends is a company. It's a local machine hire company. If you live in the south, you've probably seen their all yellow vehicles driving around. But I know it's not necessarily just pitches, but because we've got a small estate, we've had diggers, dumpers, cherry picker, a post hole borer to put holes in the pitch to fill with gravel and then top up. And just while I'm speaking about that, this is reminding me, we buy the red diesel for our tractor from them. So you're not buying pump price. We're using agri diesel, which is fine because we don't go on the roads.
Yeah.
We've also got a very good local agricultural engineer who we works with us, again, likes us. So he does a servicing repair and is an all-round mechanical help. Personally, I use the ground blogs and forums on the internet, pitch care, and funny enough, I'm also a member of the FA, the Football Association Groundsman Forum, and you can pick up stuff from there. It's good to network. Rugby grounds do road shows. There's trade shows. Rugby Taylor to us have been brilliant with their advice. And I've got to mention Twitter because that's how Friday Club, if you like, became a bit not famous, but more better known. I see we've got my friends from Staines and Stockton listening in, but also on our Twitter page we've got followers from Old Trafford and the Burner Bell. So that's a bit of a fillip, if you like.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. So again, in terms of building the budget, join Rugby Groundsman Connected. If you haven't really do that, encourage people at the club to do that. Lots of resource on there that'll help you do that. The RFU pitch contractors, they give us favourable rates for the vertidraining, etc., that we'll need doing. And there's lots of packages out there and help that the RFU have secured. People like Rugby Taylor, people like Isiki as well out there. And as John said, Twitter's great. I love seeing the Crowborough lads on Twitter, what they're up to. And you learn from all of that. And I'm a great supporter of the Grounds Management Association. Their courses, they do online courses now, very, very cost effective. I think their level 1 now is about £25 online. So well worth looking at doing. Ted, am I back to you? Can't hear.
No, I think you're going to. I think everyone, you're going to have to put up with my dulcet tones for the remainder of the session. Ted's got a few technical issues. So thanks, Andy. Hopefully everyone's found that sort of useful and thought provoking, which is the real key bit. There's some brilliant stuff coming in the chat function in terms of how different clubs are dealing with their budgets, how they're planning, and how they're starting to look ahead. Some great things in there, some 3-year plans, some different elements. So we all know COVID is going to have an impact, and so the sort of final bit, as we did after the pitch policy, is just starting to have a think about how that may impact your annual plan. If you had a 3-year plan, what this year looks like as a standalone year. So what we want to do, and these deck of slides will be sent out to you as part of the follow-up tomorrow, but leave you, I guess, with some more prompt questions, and just if some of this strikes a chord that you can share in the chat of ideas you've come up with. So actually, have you reviewed your plan now and started to get it costed now for next spring? Starting to do that so you understand what if you're one of the 20% that know the budget, great. You can look at where that's going to go. If you're one of the ones that are still to be confirmed and trying to negotiate that, start to have a look at how that might look, and then importantly, then in terms of this year, what has to be done, what is going to be essential, and what needs to be done in terms of that. So looking at as we've already chatted through, what the pitch usage is going to look like. It's going to be different. However it is, it's going to be different this year, even if we end up with more members on your own site for longer periods of time with no opposition, or if you've got opportunities to rest those pitches. I noticed in the chat, John Austin at Tyndale mentioned that the use of weekends now, looking at reducing maybe some of the midweek training and using the weekends more and spreading out use on a Saturday with the different groups that are coming down. The weekend use again may look different. Saturday may look more like a Sunday in some cases at clubs, getting more people spread out with social distancing. So having a think about how that might impact your pitches and your annual plan is really, really important. And then just in terms of how you can do that differently, so starting to look at how that might save money, how can we actually start to reduce that? And we'll share some examples of that from the chat following the session. But if you had 3 aerations booked on a pitch which is now not being used, can you reduce that? Could you prioritise your sandy seed, your different elements? So and I think from the chat as well, and from listening to John and Andy, there's opportunity for us to work together more as clubs, and really that's the ethos and the aim of Rugby Grounds Connected is to start to get us to do that more as the RFU and as clubs to look at how we can do that more. I'm just conscious of the time, so John, I know we've asked for a bit of feedback on a few areas. We're just going to sort of move on. We've covered a few of those elements, and we do want to try and finish on time. So please start sharing this idea. We as we work towards next spring, it's really important that we can start to support you with these amended plans and revised plans. So share that with your facilities manager, with your local pitch advisor, and through Rugby Groundsman Connected at rfu.com, and we'll aim to try and support that. So, as I say, just to try and bring the session to a close, there's been some great stuff tonight, and we do want to get you away on time. So, the objectives that we set out at the start, hopefully, have allowed you to consider whether you do or don't have a pitch policy and how that might help your club. There's a large percentage that didn't have that, and especially now when we're looking at different usage of pitches. If you've had pods of 6 across your pitch for the last couple of months, how's that looked? A pitch policy is a really, really beneficial and quick and easy tool that you can start to implement. But importantly, it's doing that with the buy-in of everybody and getting everybody to want to do that and see the benefits of that, as John's outlined, has been a huge thing with Crowborough and the Crows and the Friday Club. We've started to have a look at the impact of COVID, and that's not going to go away. That's something we're going to have to keep returning to, but looking at that from a grounds perspective rather than just the playing side and what impact that's going to have. And then hopefully we've started to have a look at what your pitch maintenance program will actually be for the next 12 months and onwards. And with the use of, I noticed one in the chat started the football use, that brings a different wear and tear that you need to plan for. So next steps. Firstly, just a big thank you from me to Andy for delivering tonight, and to John for joining us from Crowborough and sharing some of those sort of brilliant examples of what you're doing down there. As you say, if you're getting the following from the Bernabeu and Old Trafford, you're doing something right there, as well as the ground's looking great. So, but really want you to go away from today, everyone that's with us, and review your plan, but come back and ask us if you need help. There's been lots of great stuff coming since webinar 1, and we've started this process due to COVID. Really, we've started to bring this support network of webinars forward. So review your plan and come and ask us if you need help. The Groundsman Connected email's there, the Twitter's there, and we've got the pitch advisors. As Ted introduced at the start, we do want to make this better. We do want to try and work out how we can use our budget and resource better as well. So we want to understand how Rugby Groundsman Connected can help you in a better way. So please let us know. Andy's mentioned that the Grounds Management Association, the GMA, and the resources and support they have. We've got a strong partnership with them, and the level 1s and their courses have now gone online. And for £25 now, you can start your journey on that course network with the level 1. It's all online and can be done in your own time. And the feedback from certainly some people that are on the session tonight has been positive. And finally, we are going to keep these going, and hopefully we'll be able to get back out and see people on the pitches soon. But for the moment, we're going to keep this program going. So our next webinar will be on the 12th of November, and we'll start to circulate the theme and the agenda for that in due time. So finally, just a big thank you from me to everybody. Thanks to Jim in the chat for answering the questions. It's great to have Jim involved as a head groundsman at Twickenham, and to John and Colin for answering the questions and being supporting there as well. Andy and John, thank you very much, and hopefully Ted's not still talking to himself in silence. We'll leave the chat bar open, so if you have got any further questions, feel free to keep using that. And it's good night from all of us.